Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Lessons in Savvy Living. I'm your host, Sia Knight, and this is the podcast in which we invite real women to tell real stories and share real lessons. I have as my guest today, I have a real woman, Valerie Hardy. And before we get started with today's topic, Valerie, what are three things that people should know about you?
Well, three things that I would say strike the fancy of Valerie. One, I am definitely an extroverted introvert. I love people, right? I love being around people, giving. I'm sort of a mama hen, affectionately, lovingly known as that. But I also am an only child. So I get a lot of energy being by myself. Super reflective, so that would be another thing I would say. And also, I love my family, I love my friends, and I'm pretty passionate about them. So I think those are the pretty big things that I'd like people to know about me.
All right, that serves as the basis as
Big
to
one.
who Valerie Hardy is. And I think that's a great segue because today our topic is dealing with the illness of a spouse. And you're going to tell your story, which is a very interesting one. And I'm not going to take over by telling any of it, it's your story to tell. But talk to me a little bit about your spouse, his illness, and how that all came to be.
Yeah, so we're going on 11 years of marriage. Who would have thought, right? And I say that because Daryl and I are going on 13 years being together, and shortly after we got engaged, right? So certainly in that like blissful, ooh la la, we're getting married, right? Telling everybody and starting the big plans. We kind of got hit pretty quickly with the big C word. So Daryl had been fighting what we thought was just a cold at first. And it started in January of 2008. And we thought, this is odd. It just kind of kept lingering.
Mhm.
And he's kind of a good soldier. He kept going to the doctor, right? He wasn't ignoring it. So that was really good, right? Especially for a Black man.
Mhm.
He was going. And they sort of kept treating it as a respiratory infection. He'd get some antibiotics, go about his business. He'd get a little better, but then it sort of would come back. And so this went on for a couple months. And then right around the spring, it was late March, a node popped up on his neck, a lymph node, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That was obviously a little scary, right? And then another one right behind his ear.
Ooh.
So obviously, this primary care physician was like, "Yeah, we need to see what's going on. Your white blood cell counts are off.
Mm.
Um, let's go ahead and do a biopsy." So Daryl's birthday is in May, and we had been sort of planning and looking at places, destination weddings, and thinking about all those things. Right, kind of still going along with the bliss of being newly engaged. And I had gone over to his place one day after work, and he had had the biopsy at that point. We were just sort of waiting. And we didn't know when we were going to get the results. It's sort of that we'll call you in 3 to 5 days once the doctor
Right.
plans.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not the greatest news, right? When your physician calls and says, "So who's with you?"
Oh my
Right?
goodness. All right, I'm going to write that
Yep,
down as
yep.
something that I don't want to hear.
So
Who's with you? Are you
who's with
sitting
you?
down? That's
Yeah,
another one. Okay.
exactly. Are you sitting down? So he said, "Well, Valerie's on her way." He goes, "Well, why don't you call me when she gets there?" Right. So I walk in the door and we call his physician, who to this day, just love this man, Dr. Ryan. And he says, "Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Your biopsy results came back. It is cancer. Right? We need you to get to an oncologist so that they can fully read the results, right? It is in the lymph node, so we'll need to look at what type and stage. Based off the initial pathology report, it looks like it might be some type of lymphoma. We're not sure yet, but your counts are super high. So we need to go get you in ASAP. And we're going to go ahead and make the appointment for you. And he stayed on the phone with us for a good 45 minutes, just walking us through every single detail that was to come. And when I tell you, like when I say to this day, I love Dr. Ryan, it was 5:45 p.m., right? So, we both work in education. It's the end of May. So let's put some context around all of this. It's the end of May. We both work in education. So it's already a pretty stressful time. But at this point, like I'm starting to tap out and he's clearly starting to tap out because life just has to take a different focus right now. We got to figure out what's going on with him. So obviously there's mixed emotions. It's the happiest time of your life when you're right planning a union and thinking about your future. And we both just got dealt this life blow, right?
Wow.
So
Let me
here I am trying to be like supportive, but scared for him. And he's trying to be brave for me. It was just this weird space, Sia, like very weird space. But I think it also brought us even closer in our journey of walking towards matrimony, if that can make any sense
uh,
at all.
wow, that is amazing. And I've heard the story, and I've known you for a while, and you've told the story, but I can tell you that I haven't heard it in such detail, and it's just I can feel it. I can feel what I what I imagine you were going through. There's no way I could really know. How old was Daryl at the time?
So Daryl was all 41, 41. So
41.
Hodgkin's, and so well, let me walk you to the diagnosis. So we get to the oncologist. We got an appointment actually 2 days later, which was pretty fast. And we
Again,
walked
another not good sign.
right
Write that down, everyone. Not a good sign.
2 days we're in the oncologist's office, right? So we walk in, and we don't know who we're going to see. Right at this point, we're working with Kaiser, which I love Kaiser. People have mixed feelings about them. Love them.
Okay.
We walk in, and we go meet the physician who was Dr. Pereira. Dr. Pereira, that's who we were going to see. Well, we walk in, and well, Dr. Pereira is the head of oncology. Another sign, right?
We on 3. Go ahead.
So we sit down, and Daryl is in a different space, right? Because when you're the patient, and this is you, and this is your journey, right? You're only processing so much. So I knew what my role had to be. I was there with a notebook. I was fully present, right? I had to put sort of the game face on, right? My background as a counselor, I've got training. I was sitting there like, okay, game face on. I can't be the fiance right now. I got to be game face. So he starts reading the pathology reports and tells us, so this is a pretty significant stage. She's in stage 4. When we stage cancer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 being the most aggressive. There are lymph nodes pretty much all over his body as it's traveled through his bloodstream. He is a young man. It is Hodgkin's lymphoma, not non-Hodgkin's, which is good, right? Of the two to have, we want it to be Hodgkin's. It's the most treatable cancer that you could have of the blood cancers, and his age, his health, right? It's highly successful given the treatments that we have now. He said, but I'm going to tell you, and he said it just straight up. We are going to be aggressive because we have to be. It is going to be a long journey of chemo and radiation. He said, think 8 to 10 months. He said, you need to be prepared that on the other side of this, you will have a quality of life that will be great and rich, but you're young. You all are thinking about getting married. you're going to not be able to have children after this. So you got some decisions to make in the next couple of days once I lay out a treatment regimen for you. And you're going to have a pretty tight timeline because in the next 5 days, you'll be starting chemo. That's when I
What?
left professional mode and went into, what did you say?
Oh my gosh.
How many days? 5. So Daryl sort of just looked at me stoically, right? And it was that moment when I think it hit him like, oh, okay, right? So
Wow.
for anybody who knows my husband, he's a very like loving, lighthearted, jovial, like Daryl lives in the good in life always. I think that was the only time, not true, first time in the journey that I saw him sink, right? Was realizing this is going to be a fight, and I wasn't expecting it to be a fight, right?
Right.
So I think that night, I remember he didn't say much, right? He ate, talked to his mom, talked to like one of his brothers, but he was pretty quiet, right? And it was hard to let him be, but I needed to, right? And I wanted to talk because I felt like there were some things we had to make decisions about,
Right.
and that was hard. And remember, we're not even married yet, right?
Oh
So
my
there are
God.
all these like nuances that it's like we're not married, we still don't live together yet. We got big decisions to make. So yeah, you just had to let it be, right? So the next morning, he's like, okay, let's go. We got to figure some stuff out, right? So okay, let's go. Meanwhile, I'm like talking to my parents, talking to my girlfriends, trying to like
Mm-hmm.
process without him around
Right.
in my moments because I had to, because then I needed to be in a different mode when he was around. So that whole complexity, which I think most women live, right? I think most women live that duality in general, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
a work life, whether it's kids, whether it's a spouse, a partner, right? I think women always have that dual sense of you got to carry something somewhere.
Absolutely. We're always in a state of meta-analysis almost. Like we're
Mhm,
in this thing and then we have to think about the effect of the thing and
mhm.
try to move the pieces. So absolutely, but not in this way. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna let you finish the story. Go ahead.
Well,
I
we
mean,
get
and the only reason I'm able to let you finish the story is spoiler alert, it all turns out fine. But
yes.
oh my gosh, go ahead, go ahead.
So first decision is are we gonna talk about children, right? Like if so, we have that's gonna be the tightest timeline. So yes, we want to have children, right? Like this is gonna be a good outcome. We're gonna be faithful and optimistic, and this is all gonna be good. So we have to get into a sperm bank and make this happen. And right, let's get the magic, honey. We gotta go, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
get that appointment. And then the following day, we're going to have to get his port put in, right, for his chemo. So we have like one day to bank sperm, the next day is the port, and then we're going to start the chemo regimen. So um, we go to funny story because you got to have humor somewhere in this crazy existence, right? We go to the sperm bank, and it's kind of like a weird place. Just, people are there for all different reasons,
Mm-hmm.
right? All different reasons. And Daryl gets there. He's like, yeah, I can't do this. I looked at him like, oh, yes, you will.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, you are.
That's right. Listen, I'm not pushing a whole lot around here, but this I'm gonna put my foot down on this one.
What do you need? Right?
Oh wow! Wait a
So,
minute. This podcast is taking a turn. Come on now.
we'll leave that at that. So,
Okay.
right, but you get this. Like at some point, you have to have humor in this journey. That was a
Yes.
humorous story.
Yes.
So we get that piece completed. We get to then the next day where the port gets put in, right? And obviously that's a little bit of an outpatient procedure, so he's a little groggy. And then we kind of just prepare ourselves because the next day's it, right? Um, his primary physician, Dr. Ryan, calls the first day just to say, thinking of y'all. This is a journey. No, I'm with y'all. I know you're in great hands with Dr. Pereira and the team, right? So his primary care physician, who we're not going to see much anymore, right? Just still checking in. Like, who
Mm-hmm.
does that?
Right.
Who does that in this day and age? That's why, to this day, that man, right? So when you walk into, some people have an awareness of dealing with an oncology clinic, right? It becomes like your second family.
Mhm.
Truly, it does, right?
Right.
The oncology nurses and are just amazing human beings to their core, right? Their care of the patients, their care of the loved ones there with the patients, right? Um, their love of what they do, it's just like nothing I've ever seen. And I know when we walked in, Becky Day was his nurse, his oncology nurse, and she was our nurse for the duration, right? Daryl got his room because he was going to be a 5-day coming in, getting injections, then coming back the next week. So he was going to be a regular for them, right? He had a little room. Daryl likes his Young the Restless, so he gets his Young the Restless streamed, and you
Mhm.
know he was just jovial and upbeat, and making the best of it with many of the other patients that were there. And I think the humbling part of that journey for him, for us, for anyone who goes through this experience is the relationships you make with other patients, right? With other families going through similar experiences, different scenarios, right? Um, and then the people who don't make it back the next day, right? So it's just this stoic reminder of how delicate and precious every single moment is, and how thankful you have to be that you're able to come back the next day for treatment, right? Or that you're well enough to come in the next day for treatment. So, um, Daryl's treatment was super aggressive. So it was a 21-day regimen. So what that meant was his chemo cycle was a full 21 days.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So he would start and have 5 days of injection, 5 days of full on IV drip,
Mm.
2 days off, and then a day on. And then we'd watch his counts, and then he'd come back and start over again.
And
So
still not married yet.
still not married. We're now into the summer though. Summertime, summer vacation. Hey.
Mm.
Um, his first treatment was so aggressive, and Dr. Pereira told us, he's like, there's a lot we have to try to kill in his system, so it's going to be a lot, and I need to see how much I can get in this first round, because the regimen he had was called Biacop, and each letter stood for a different drug. And he said, this regimen has to get the most in the first round for it to be effective. So it's going to be a lot. So be prepared. So we knew it. Um, he went through the first 5 days, right? 6, 7, came back, got his last dose, came home, and Daryl, I'm good, I'm great, life's good, right? Hair starts to, so he goes ahead and shaves it off, right? Hair, eyebrows, it all comes out.
Okay.
And then day 9 hit, Sia. And then day 9 hit, and Daryl couldn't get out of bed, and Daryl couldn't make it to the bathroom, and Daryl couldn't get downstairs or consume any food.
Mm.
So we made our way to the urgent care for Kaiser, and they're like, nope, don't pass go. We're going straight to Inova Fairfax. So in the hospital we go. And he's in sort of, I'd imagine, we're living in a COVID life right now, but I imagine that it's very much like that, in that he was in a double isolation, right? You couldn't get to him without going through the washroom, where you had to sort of take your stuff off and get doubled up, and then you could go in, because his counts had dropped that badly. And he landed himself in the hospital for a good 7 days because his counts were so low. So that was scary, right? And he was pretty not with it. So it was calling his mom and his siblings, and guys, yeah, this is where we are. It's the first round, and we've got 5 more to go. So, yep, right. So siblings are coming up. His mom came, and Dr. Pereira is there too, right? And he's like, this is what I thought would happen. And he
Mhm.
said, but the good news is we got about 85% of it in the first round.
Oh, wow.
So, right? He's like, this is what we needed. And
Mm.
he's like, and I know this is hard to see, but this is what we had to do, right? Um, so we do kind of humbly make our way back home, realizing this is going to be a journey, Daryl. So round 2 comes, and not as bad as round 1. He's able to actually do a little bit of FMLA, so some level of work, which was good for his spirit, right? He could go in when he could, but then the weeks that he knew his counts would drop, he was, at home, no fresh vegetables, everything had to be canned, no
Mhm.
out in public, right? No movies, no places to be. He was pretty much at home. Back then it was Netflix or still DVDs, got the mail, right? Um, so yeah, that was 6 months, and by the 6th month, we had kind of gotten in a good rhythm to the point where he knew what to expect. Right, I'm gonna have a good 10 days, then I'm gonna have a bad 5 days, then I have a pretty good days going into my next round. Right,
Mhm.
to the point that by his last round, he was driving himself to chemo, which
Oh,
was
wow.
amazing. Right, um, but then that last round came, Sia, and we're excited because it's like it's the last round, right?
Mhm.
Becky's excited, like, I'm not gonna see y'all anymore, and I love y'all, so then y'all take me to dinner, right? We're like, yep, we got you,
Mhm.
Becky. Well, the last round, Daryl got pneumonia, and he couldn't get his last round because he got pneumonia,
Oh my gosh.
which landed him in the hospital again. And while he was in the hospital, he actually wasn't getting better this time. And this is the only other time his spirit broke. And as his fiance at the time, right, I had been on the roller coaster with him, but this is when I didn't know how to be the cheerleader anymore. And I am a good cheerleader in life, right?
Yes, you are.
I hit a wall because he got so sick with the pneumonia, and he wasn't getting better, and at one point the physicians at the hospital even said, we don't know what's wrong,
Oh my god.
right? We don't know what it is, you're not getting better. So finally the infectious disease physicians are now coming in, like,
Oh Lord, Dr. Fauci and them?
before we knew how important they were,
That's
right?
right.
At that time it's still like infectious disease, you mean like AIDS, right? Like that's where we were, right? Think
Mhm.
10, 11 years right ago.
Right.
So they're like, you know what, we want to run a test. I wonder if your port is infected.
Ooh.
So they do, and they're like, you have a staph infection and it's from your port.
Ooh.
Well, that's problematic for how many reasons?
Mhm.
Because how else is he going to get his final round without a port?
Mhm.
So they have to take it out because it's
Right.
infected, right?
Mm.
He sees, yeah, you're even freaking out.
I am, yes. Ugh.
So at this point, Daryl is like so close to being done with the chemo, and it would shift to the radiation. And now he's like, I've come this far.
Oh my gosh.
And you just saw it on his face, like the fight and the spirit and all of it just went. And I was like, what do you do? Right? What do you do? So all we could do was just sort of sit with it together and just process what does come next, right? Guess who calls us? Dr. Ryan.
I was gonna say it's the doctor, Dr. Ryan.
He does. He's like, I've been following Dr. Pereira's reports. You're 96% clean. Like, roll with it. Dr. Pereira thinks just roll into the radiation. The radiation can get the rest. You don't need the last round. Roll with it. So, and that was the recommendation, was let's just forego the last round and see where we go and see where it lands. So at that point, that felt like the right thing. Daryl was done. He was over it. I mean, he had been in the hospital at this point for 3 weeks.
Mm.
Um, and he's a giver too, right? It's the only time he broke. and he broke, and I'll tell you, Sia, he broke when work colleagues and friends were coming by, and he said to me one night in the hospital, he's like, and he just looked at me, he goes, all these people just keep giving. All these people just keep giving, and I can't do anything but receive. Right? Oh, I'm about to cry. And I was like, that's the way the circle of life works, babe.
Mhm.
It's your turn to receive.
And you're
Right?
still not married.
Oh, still not married. So, right?
Hmm.
So we have to wait for his body to recover a bit before we can think about anything, because that was a journey, navigating that last round with the port and everything. So once he got the all clear from Dr. Pereira, they did roll him into 30 back-to-back days of radiation.
Good gracious, that's a lot of burning.
It's a lot of burden. He was a marked up little ray of sunshine. But it was, all the big spots
Yeah.
on him. So he would go every day after work. He'd go to work, stop by the radiation center, lay on the table for 25 minutes and come on home and sleep in a separate room, because I wasn't going to get any radiated
Hmm.
stuff. But when he finished his 30 days, right, he goes back to get his round of blood work and tests, and they're like, guess what, sir? Guess where we are? You, my friend, are free of cancer. We got to sit for a couple months before we can use the R word, which is remission, but it worked, right? So I can't tell you, Sia, by that point, you're just like, no, I need to hear remission.
Hmm.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. Right? We've had 2 hospital stays,
Right.
a staph infection. We just need to hear remission, right? And through all of this, right, we still are like, his hope was a wedding. His hope was, I'm fighting because we're getting married. I'm not backing down. We're not adjusting things. I am getting married to you, and we are going to have our wedding, and we're going to have to adjust it. And things are going to look different. April 4th, 2009. That's the date, and I'm sticking to it, right? So that was his fight. And because of that, that was our wedding date, right? And it was so magically beautiful for all the reasons that a wedding would be, but the journey, Sia, as you could imagine, just made it that much more magical. So here we are, right? It's 2020. Is that
Yeah.
right?
When is it? Yeah,
2020.
2020. Yeah.
2020.
Oh, you can't
Um,
forget this year, but go ahead.
oh, COVID. But 2020, we have an 8-year-old, right? Couple rounds of IVF later, because that frozen sperm came in handy.
Hmm.
He's
He
a
made it
1-year-old.
through somehow. Good job, Valerie.
It is the story of laughter now, right? But we have a beautiful 8-year-old, and um, a healthy Daryl going on his 12th year of being cancer free and in remission. And every year he goes and gets his scans, right? Every year he goes and just checks in. We still have Dr. Ryan in our lives, and we still take Becky to lunch. Becky's down in Warrenton, right? Virginia now. Um, they're just connections and people that you will always have in your life, right? Because the journey, and it's so intimate, right? But the journey, you can't get through it without these people. And so, when you think of the parallels to right now, and COVID, and first responders, and nurses, and givers, and people who just sacrifice because they become a part of you, right? It's so true. And I know we are forever grateful for the people that got us through this. I know medical technology, right? And the people who continue to work behind the scenes to find the newest, latest, greatest, who don't always get the glory, right? Did
Right.
any of us know what an epidemiologist was
Mm-mm.
5 months ago?
Right.
You just have to sometimes sit and say, wow, this is our journey. And even on those days when I tell you he leaves his socks out one more time, I'm grateful that he's able to leave his socks out one more time.
So I'm grateful to you for sharing in such detail your story, because not only is it your story, and you know that I asked you, I was like, ask Daryl
Yeah.
whether it's okay to share, because I know he's such a gregarious guy and every, but this, you're opening up your life in a way that you maybe hadn't done before. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing the story. And what would you say is your biggest lesson from that time?
I think it's that piece of, you always walk into something and think, okay, we got this. We got a plan, we got a system, we got people, we got everything we need. We got this, right? We got his family, my family, and you just never know what you're going to need until until life presents you with it. And I I think for me, there were so many unknowns. And I think as someone who likes to sort of see all the cards and know, and
Mhm,
this was my first real, whoa, I don't know what is coming.
mhm.
I am just following this journey, and I am just trusting wherever it's going to take us has to be right. And I know that may seem a little cliche, but I think as women, we tend to have a plan. And I think, for me, I was in my early 30s, and it is that, well, what's next? What you gonna do next? How you
Right.
gonna get it done? Right? And it was not only for this journey of dealing with Daryl's cancer, it was also planning a wedding
Mhm.
when you are the most in that zone, right?
Right.
So it kind of had to suspend all of it and just say, I'm here,
Right.
I'm going with it. And I
And
think sometimes I have to tap back into that a little bit more, even now in my 40s, to say, yeah, I've been there, done that. I
mhm,
can let this go because I had to let all that go.
right. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. I really appreciate it, Valerie. I knew that you were going to be a good guest, but you've even exceeded my expectations, and I'm just telling you that straight up. I'm not just trying to, be funny, ha ha ha, and blow smoke. I'm like, this was really, really good, Valerie. Did a wonderful job. I really appreciate you sharing so much of yourself. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, Sia. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. All right, everybody. That's it for this episode of Lessons in Savvy Living. Until next time, stay savvy. Bye.